All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dan Baker, and I am the director of the Global Reentry Program here at the National Peace Corps Association. We are here today to talk about community advocacy needs. We occasionally do these listening town halls to hear from our community on priorities and issues that are facing you. So thanks for those who are joining today. Want to give a special thanks to Harry Stein, who Jonathan will introduce in a moment, and recognize a couple of other NPCA colleagues who are with us today. Jody Hammer probably needs no introduction to those of you who are familiar with the Global Reentry Program. She's the Career Service Specialist. And welcome to Kaylee Jensen, who is joining us from I think it's Dallas, as she begins her first week interning with the National Peace Corps Association. Thanks for jumping on board, Kaylee. And Jonathan Pearson should also be a familiar name to anybody who's been around the National Peace Corps Association. Jonathan is our advocacy director and has done some fantastic work over the last few years. I've just been involved with him in the past couple of years on the NPCA board and now as one of his colleagues. And I just want to thank you on behalf of our recently returned volunteer community, Jonathan, for all of the proactive work and responsiveness that you've demonstrated for those, especially dealing with unemployment assistance claims and helping to resolve those and reaching out to people like Harry. So I'll let you say a few more words about what you're doing there and Phil, about our objectives today. And you are on mute, sir.
You think after all these Zoom calls, I'd know that by now, but thanks everyone. And thank you, Dan and Jody. And I just want to say to the two of you, this was a goal of NPCA for quite a while to have a global reentry program established, and this very unfortunate pandemic really created the necessity to move that along, and we could not have two better people than Dan and Jody leading that effort. So thank you both, and thanks for the opportunity today. For those of you who are on, I'm Jonathan Pearson, the advocacy director here. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Federated States of Micronesia in the late 1980s. One thing I want to ask you if you'd be willing to do in the chat section as you're coming on is just note who you are and where you're writing from, and if there's a particular topic or topics you wanted to hear about, talk about, share some thoughts about today in particular. And so that hopefully we certainly have a group that's manageable enough so we can sit back and listen to your thoughts as well as we go along. But that will help make sure that we touch the issues that you want over the next 50 minutes or thereabouts. One of the issues, as Dan said, that has been on the minds of people, and I know at least a couple of the people who are on this call, has been the struggle with getting the unemployment that has been designated for evacuees and that you are eligible for and that you deserve in these difficult times. And we thought we'd start by, I was so fortunate to have a special guest who has been doing such great work, and the work of his boss. He is Harry Stein is staff with United States Senator Chris Van Hollen from the state of Maryland, my state. He's my senator. Senator Van Hollen, as you may know, led an effort to just clarify and make sure that evacuees were included once Congress made the decision that there would be this special circumstance in light of the pandemic through a program called the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program to make sure that evacuees were part of that program. He and another congressman in the House of Representatives, Dean Phillips, spearheaded a letter to the Department of Labor that asked and clarified that yes, evacuees would be eligible, and further reached out and clarified one of the big questions of, the circumstance for evacuees in terms of where should they be applying because of the unique circumstances. And Harry's been somebody I've been reaching out to on a number of occasions over the last few months when circumstances and situations have arose, and he's just been so helpful. But I do want to note one thing, is that one of the challenges is that him working at the federal level, I think we're going to ask him some questions just to provide an update and some clarification on what's going on right now with the program, but he's not an expert on the circumstances in all 50 states, because as you have unfortunately been experiencing, this program was initiated at the federal level, but it's being implemented at the state level, and all the 50 states have different agencies with different processes and all that. So we probably won't be able to get to your specifics, but hopefully we can have some helpful conversation here to start this hour. So Harry, welcome. Great to have you with us, and thank you for your public service. And the first question I wanted to ask you is just, what is the current status of the PUA program and payments within the federal government? Is there a gap in the program now? I think there's actually a vote today on a possible the next round of Senate relief. What's the latest on this?
Yeah, no, I think that sets the table well. Thanks for having me on, and thank you to everybody on the call for your service in the Peace Corps. I've been with Senator Van Hollen for about 3 years now, working on these issues. And you're right. I think when the CARES Act got passed in March, we believed, but it moved very quickly. But our understanding of it was that it should cover folks like Peace Corps volunteers, but there was ambiguity on the subject. We let a letter to the Department of Labor to get clarification, and we got that. Now, I think since then what we've seen is, as you say, unemployment is a federal state program, and so there's all 50 states plus all the territories in the District of Columbia. And so actually delivering the unemployment benefits generally to everybody has been a huge challenge because those systems are so overwhelmed. And for Peace Corps beneficiaries, I think for Peace Corps, returned Peace Corps volunteers in particular, it's been hard. So Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, PUA, was created by the CARES Act in March. It was one of 3 programs that the CARES Act created, three larger ones on unemployment. So what PUA did is, for people who are not otherwise eligible for regular unemployment insurance, it provides unemployment insurance benefits. It works in a kind of similar way to how to a similar program for in areas that are hit by natural disasters. So a lot of the rules work similarly. But the basic idea is it just expands eligibility quite a bit. Otherwise, a lot of people like you all who become unemployed are not eligible for unemployment benefits. The other 2, there's one that provides a 13-week extension of benefits for people that exhaust their regular unemployment assistance. That's called PEUC. And then the third, which has been in the news quite a bit now and is also relevant here, is federal pandemic unemployment compensation. That's the extra $600 that was being added to unemployment and benefits every week. That's what's expired as of the end of July. So if you've been getting benefits and your benefits fell by $600, that's why is that expired. But the PUA program runs through the end of this year. So you should still be getting unemployment benefits in general because of PUA. The benefit amount would have changed because FPUC, the extra $600, went away. To further complicate this, there's now this executive order that adds, generally it'll be $300 if you're in a state that's participating through FEMA. So Trump did this executive order called Lost Wages Assistance, where he's drawing down some money in the FEMA disaster fund to add money to weekly unemployment benefits. The headline was $400, but in actuality, it's in most cases, I think not all, going to be $300 for kind of complicated and not terribly important reasons. But the way that that's going to, it seems like that's going to cover 6 weeks more of benefits after the $600 expired in July. So August and like 1 week of September. And states are still getting that online generally if they're participating, and not every state is. So if you're getting benefits in those 6 weeks, you may then see a retroactive payment from that of, if it's, I think it looks like it'll cover 6 weeks of benefits. So at $300 a week, that would be $1,800 extra from that. So what Congress is considering now is kind of a more stable extension of the increase in unemployment benefits. The House passed the HEROES Act, which continues the $600 through early next year. And that would be retroactive to when it expired, when the $600 expired. The Senate Republican proposal that may be getting voted on, actually, if not right now, momentarily, would do $300 through the end of this year. So it would reduce the $600 to $300, but then have that go till the end of this year. It doesn't, that is not going to pass. It would need 60 votes. It's not going to get that. So negotiations continue, and unfortunately, I think we don't know if there will be legislation that passes at all, and if so, what it says. But the main variable here is that additional amount that gets added onto benefits. But the underlying PUA program exists through the end of this year, at least.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question, I think it relates to something that's in the chat line here from Carolyn, as well as there are still members of our community who are struggling to get their PUA. They are still eligible, and then questions about the back pay, the retroactive pay. In a case where somebody maybe gets approved and they start to get payments from the more recent application, the more recent weeks, are they eligible still going all the way back to, say, April? Are there any possible alterations to that possibility? Yes.
So PUA is retroactive all the way back, actually, to the end of January. So January 27th is when it would first. I'm getting an echo. I'm not sure if that's my end or.
You sound good.
Okay, good. I'm going to mute. Okay. So it's retroactive back to January 27th, which means that whenever your application gets approved, you should be paid benefits back to the point when you first became unemployed and eligible. So for Peace Corps, I think that was March. Now, that said, the states and DC and territories might be processing these things quite slowly, and that doesn't. I think I saw that that Carolyn's still waiting for the back pay. That is similar to what some of the experiences that we've been seeing in Maryland, and we've also heard from some folks that live in Maryland but are applying for are eligible for benefits in DC. So that is unfortunately not an uncommon experience. But the bottom line is you are eligible for those benefits retroactively. and we can talk more about, how to best kind of navigate the delays, but unfortunately we're to some degree at the mercy of the state system and trying to, kind of push things through there, which, like I say, I think especially with Peace Corps folks has been a challenge.
Jonathan, you need to unmute.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Sorry. So as you were saying, and just to clarify, the challenge from your perspective, evacuees are facing some significant challenges, but this is something that from your perspective, you're seeing across the board with other people in the gig economy and so on that have been trying to get benefits as well.
Right. We've seen this, like, I would say pretty across the board. But I think Peace Corps volunteers have been kind of in some of the worst situations, but you're certainly not alone in this. So the advice that I would give kind of generally here is, first of all, keep doing what you can to get in touch with the state system. Sometimes emailing works better than calling. Sometimes calling works better than emailing. In Maryland, I know folks have had some success if they speak Spanish, trying the Spanish language line. Just kind of try whatever avenue you can to get to something that works. The other advice would be, you can ask for help from both your federal representatives, wherever you live, and we've done a lot of we call it casework, a lot of casework for folks in Maryland, to just kind of get their cases pushed through. And we've been pretty successful at that. So you're certainly, if you live in Maryland, our office would certainly want to help. And Jonathan, please feel free to ask Jonathan, get my contact information, or you can just go directly through vanhollen.senate.gov. But we'd be happy to help for Maryland. But I think our colleagues in other states, are doing the same. The other thing is you can, because it's a federal state program, you can work through your state officials, or in DC, of course, your DC council member, and that might be that might be helpful. I think especially with Peace Corps folks, the way that a lot of these computer systems work, it seems, is that anybody that has anything out of the ordinary just can get stuck in a limbo. And so that's where I think, a council member or a state rep or a federal, member of Congress or a senator can just be helpful in just kind of getting someone to take a look at this and give you an answer. And so I that's what I would encourage if you're just kind of getting stuck. And, if you've tried contacting a congressman and the thing still isn't working, try contacting one of your senators, try contacting both your senators, try contacting a state. You have a lot of people who represent you, even if you're in DC and you don't have voting rights at the federal level, unfortunately, and Senator Van Hollen supports DC statehood. But until we get that, you have at least, your folks at the local level as well.
One other question, Harry, and this was something I think was particularly something we've seen a lot of, and it just goes back to the question of where, and again, somewhat, not totally unique, but somewhat unique to our community, that you had volunteers who obviously the big issue that's different is that their work was overseas, not in a particular state. Many volunteers, prior to their service, were living in one state, and then when they came back, they were living in a different state. And then since March or April, there have been a number of situations where, because of grad school or because of a new job that's emerged, or just a very transient group that has moved perhaps from one state to another in the last few months. Any advice in circumstances like that on what's the best way to apply? Because I assume it becomes problematic if somebody tries to apply in multiple locations. So is there a best rule of thumb for people?
Yeah, so what we asked the Department of Labor this question, and they said that for people who become unemployed, in general, when you become unemployed, you apply for unemployment in the state where you were working, not where you're living, by the way. So if you live in Maryland and you work in DC and you become unemployed, you apply in DC in general. Of course, for Peace Corps volunteers, you became unemployed outside of the country. And so we asked the Department of Labor, what should folks do? And the answer that they gave us was that you should apply in the state that you're living in now. So that's the basic, that's the general answer, is apply in the state that you're living in now. That doesn't mean that that state knows that, so you might need to tell them that. The other thing where this can get really complicated is if you were working in another state, then did Peace Corps, and now you're back. One of the requirements for pandemic unemployment assistance is that you are ineligible for regular UI. And so part of the process for the state processing the application is to disqualify you from regular UI, to make sure that, yeah, you don't get regular UI. So the answer might be in some cases that you might end up needing to apply and get rejected in another state to then be able to show the state that you're living in now, no, I'm not eligible there. Because what they might see is, well, we see a wage record for you in, Virginia. So it looks like you'd be eligible for regular UI in Virginia, so we can't qualify you for pandemic unemployment assistance. If you can show them correspondence that says, no, I'm ineligible in Virginia, and I became unemployed as a Peace Corps volunteer abroad, and so I'm supposed to apply where I live now, that might help. Now, of course, what I've just described is a pretty long process. So I think, generally, hopefully you can kind of prevail on the state that you live now, that you became unemployed while working abroad, and that means that you should apply and be eligible in the state that you're living in. But if they're insisting that no, you should be applying somewhere else, applying and getting rejected there might actually be productive at the end of the day. And I should say too, in general, we've seen this with other kind of unemployment cases where somebody, where it's confusing because they get a rejection note and like, well, yeah, I know I'm an independent contractor. And that's actually just kind of like an intermediate step to ultimately qualifying them for PUA. The further wrinkle here is if you have like some mix of ink, if you have some mix of I don't think this would be that applicable in this case, but like musicians will have this, where most of your work is as a contractor, not something that's covered by regular unemployment, but then you also had some work that was covered by regular unemployment, then the answer is you're eligible for regular unemployment and therefore not eligible for PUA. So that could be introducing some complication too, if as separate from Peace Corps, you had some other work history that did make you eligible for regular unemployment, then that's what you should end up getting. Because of the ways the program works. Because going back again, a rule for PUA is you're ineligible for regular UI. I don't think that would be the case for many folks if you're just doing Peace Corps, but that could be a complicating factor in some cases.
Harry, do you have a few more minutes? And if so, I thought we've got a workable group here, and I just wanted to see if we could open it up to see if any of your comments spark any other questions or thoughts, again, with the understanding that you can't necessarily speak to the specifics of a particular state, but if there are any general questions that people had. So if anybody would like to ask a question or share something with Harry, just unmute yourself and introduce yourself and fire away.
Hi, thanks so much for joining and for all the advice. I really appreciate your time. I received advice from the DC Department of Employment Assistance to, even after you go back to full-time work or any work, to continue filing your weekly claims, even if you get $0 for that week, if you haven't yet received all your benefits. So in my case, it would be the back pay between March and May. Would you agree with that, even though, you know, you're working full time now, you're not getting any benefits moving forward, to keep your case open until all the money is received?
So if that's what they told you, I think that is what you should do. And that doesn't sound crazy to me, because, right, you're going to be reporting your income each week, so you won't get any benefit. And so you're not doing anything fraudulent.
Right.
So that makes sense. I mean, it's a little bit in general where that comes, where you usually, once you return to kind of full-time permanent work, you don't keep doing that. You'd be like reporting income, but continuing to file if it's like a part-time or temporary job.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's the advice that you got from DC, because otherwise DC might just close your file and you might never see the retro. Like that doesn't sound crazy to me. And and it's also the kind of thing where even if DC then came back and said, well, you shouldn't have been doing that, they wouldn't have paid you anything. So I don't think you could possibly you're reporting your wages the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, and this is, at this point, I'm really just kind of speculating, but did you get that in writing from them?
No, it was over the phone. It was basically because she said, yeah, they would close the case and then you would never receive the remaining benefits that you're owed, and it would further complicate things. So that's why I just continued filing that I worked and don't get, benefits for those weeks.
So I would suggest doing what they recommend, but also just make a note for yourself of kind of when you had that conversation and got told that, just in case DC comes back and says you were doing this wrong, that you were reporting, you weren't getting any benefits you shouldn't have been getting.
Mm-hmm.
But just in case they say, well, why didn't you close it out? So that you can just say, look, I had a phone call on this date, and if you have the name of the person you talked to, but even if you just, whatever record you can kind of keep for yourself, probably makes the most sense. But that doesn't sound like a crazy thing that the DC system would work that way, even if it's not really how it's supposed to work. So I would take their advice.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this topic? I see whether it's Lee or Dan or Charity or Daniel or Christina, any thoughts? Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
So the last time I'd been in touch with my state office, they recommended I still give a call to the adjudication line to, I guess, try to just patch things up even more. But it's been really hard to get on. I mean, like all the other lines, it's been really hard to get on that one too. And I was wondering, would contacting my congressman's office make a difference there?
I think so. A lot of the claims that we've seen get backed up because they're stuck in adjudication. So I think that, I think that generally, especially if it's like this thing's just stuck and they're not giving you an answer, that's a good place to call your member of Congress and let them know that, I think like, when you call or write, just kind of give them all the information and where things stand. I know in Maryland, what we've been doing is just kind of giving basically a spreadsheet of here are all the cases that we have that are still open, and then we get updates on those periodically. But that sounds, I think like I say, I think the Peace Corps specific issue might be a bit uncommon, but the issue of having your claim stuck in adjudication is very common and a good reason to go to your member of Congress.
And I'd say from our end, we definitely heard feedback from people, some saying that, and we've seen instances where reaching out to your members at the federal level with Congress has, yielded the success you're looking for. In other cases, it's been more at the state level with your state senators or state house reps, or in some cases, either the committees of jurisdiction at the state level. So we're trying to do some more work recently with some folks who have been continuing to respond to us on that, and just trying to see if we can help get them connected at that level as well. Any other last questions on this topic before Harry has to go?
Thanks so much, Harry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Harry, for your very helpful work to our community, and please extend our thanks to Senator Van Hollen for his work. And you know, I think one thing we might do, we want to have we want to make sure we're able to have a good discussion here and a frank discussion. I think maybe at least with this section of the webinar, we might be able to make that public. I think we talked to you about that, and that might be helpful, but we can talk to you more about that just in case to make sure, but I know we've got it for transcription purposes. But thank you so much, and we really appreciate taking time out of your schedule today.
And
Absolutely.
Thank you for on the line if you're interested in other topics, Harry.
I do have to jump off, but thank you for having me on, and you know, it's really helpful for me too to get to hear just what kind of roadblocks people are running into, because you know, we kind of try our best to keep an eye on these trends and figure out, you know, when are things rising to the level of needing to do something at a more at the policy level. But thank you so much. Thanks for your service, and hopefully, you know, all these things get worked out sooner rather than later. Thank you.
So as advertised, we didn't want to just limit this to PUA needs and issues. If there are other challenges that you're facing with evacuation, then we would like to open up. I think, Jonathan, the idea was just to hear other needs, if they're medical related or other. The floor is open. And then if we exhaust any other topics that I know we would like to share, if you'd like to stay on the line, there's some great tools and recommendations that Jonathan can share with us on how to best advocate for evacuees and RPCVs in general. So turn it back over to you, Jonathan, to moderate any other questions.
Yeah, so if either via the chat or via again, opening up your mic, we're open to hear some more from you about what brought you to this session today. Is there any particular topic you wanted to speak to, share information about? And this is kind of the open forum section, so so the floor is yours. And again, I think either open up your mic or we'll be monitoring and looking here at the chat to see if anything comes in. So we await your feedback and updates.
Hi, this is Lee. Sorry, I'm not going to turn on my camera just because I'm having some internet problems and I don't want to strain the Wi-Fi any more than I have to. I came here I found the link to this from a thread of people discussing problems with getting payment for medical care or reimbursement for medical care. A lot of them were saying that that their hospitals had contacted them about payment because they hadn't been able to get the claim filled with IMG. I had a slightly different issue where I tried to submit a claim for reimbursement and got a confirmation email saying it was submitted, talked to someone on the phone a month later who said it was never submitted, issues with the website, stuff like that. But I guess my question is, if we do have problems getting reimbursement or with the hospital getting the claim filled, is there anyone we can appeal to, who we can talk to about it?
Lee, thanks for that question. I know in recent weeks we've received a couple of other emails along those lines, and some of the bills just being really large. I think someone there was an individual who reached out to us a couple of days ago related to a COVID-19 test that they needed to do, and where they ran into an issue of needing to have that test because of circumstances, and it was service-related circumstances, and then getting the test done and then having the claim rejected. So we probably something that we should do, and if you could, we'll make sure we put our emails in the chat box, and you could follow up with me, because maybe one thing that we should and could be doing is just trying to capture, some testimonies from people, and they don't have to be, they could just be kind of anonymous. They don't, you could put your name to it. Wouldn't have to, but just to be able to share with Peace Corps leadership the extent of, or some of the issues that our volunteers are facing with IMG. I'll make sure I'm going to type in my email right now so you can follow up with me, and we can talk about how to just try to collect more information on that. Anything else, Lee, or anybody else?
No, thank you. That's very helpful.
My email is Jonathan.
My 2 cents
Sorry,
there, sorry, Jonathan. Lee is just to keep going up the chain at Peace Corps. I know that as you go up the chain, responsiveness doesn't always improve, but I know that in our conversations at the highest levels with Jody Olson, that they are very much looking out for evacuees' best interests, at least in doing everything they can. But I think the efficiency in I worked at Peace Corps headquarters for a number of years, and efficiency in the medical post-service office has not always had the best reputations. So I would encourage you to just go up the chain if needed there. And Jonathan, what were you saying? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Nope, that's, I was just going to say other issues, other items people wanted to bring to our attention today.
See, Dan turned his video on.
Hi there.
Dan?
Yes, I actually had a question in regard to, and I probably should have raised this while Harry was on the line, and curious if Senator Van Hollen has had any involvement or influence, but something separate from the evacuation PCV community, but more related to our PCVs who might have had some issues with the economic impact payments, the CARES Act payments. What was stipulated or designated for individuals or for couples was a $1,200 per person disbursement for those earning under X amount. I believe it's $150,000 per year, et cetera. I'm just curious if within the RPCV community, if you have had complaints or concerns or any sort of articulation of challenges faced, because I happen to be, married and had 2 children. Both I and my spouse received the payments, but the designated payments for my children, which when I have 2, was left off, was not calculated and delivered. And I've known some other people outside of the RPCV community who have encountered similar challenges. So this really is just sort of a question to see if you have, as an organization among the RPCV network, if this has been one of the challenges with CARES Act, and has there been any sort of suggested solutions or guidance? So that's the nature of it. Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't, and I'm going to see if Dan or Jody have. I've not seen much coming across my screen on that particular question from RPCVs. I know that there's different rates of funding depending on income level and all that. I imagine, I guess I would say, after what we heard, about the PUA payments, it may not be surprising that there's some similar challenges, but I'm not familiar too with kind of the what might be the adjudication process as it relates to having not gotten a payment or not received fully what was offered. Dan or Jody, have you seen or heard anything raised on that front?
Do they have anything else to add? I see that Jody had a similar experience with her child.
Yeah, Dan Bolger, I had the same exact thing happen where we didn't get that part. And I think my husband is still working to try to resolve it. I stepped back on that one.
Well, getting online with the IRS is a bit of an endurance test.
Yes, it is.
And the at least the automated guidance that I had was that if and my family had resubmitted our tax filing to have a review, they indicated that any reviews would be dealt with in up to 16 weeks. So IRS has provided some sort of acknowledgement of it, and that any resubmissions will be considered, but that it may take some time. So I was just curious if within the community you'd heard any sort of rumblings, concerns, or issues that have cropped up since. So thought I might just touch on it. But thank you for commiserating with me.
And
Yeah.
Dan, sorry, Dan, where do you live? Where are you residing?
Well, I don't know if you can.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm a Boston Red Sox fan, so I don't want to see that. So you're, yeah.
I reside in just north of New York City in New York State.
Okay.
So was just curious.
I mean, one thing I would say about that issue is that strikes as much more purely a federal issue as opposed to the, with the PUA, there's like the state element to that. So I think trying to reach out directly to your whether it's your senators or your House member of Congress, just to because and a good way to ask it is, ask them, and you could reach out to me and we could try to put you directly in touch with a staffer on the issue. So drop me a note and send me your zip code and your address, and then we can try to maybe just to, as some of you write kind of a generic message to a lawmaker, and it goes through a process, and it hopefully gets on the desk of the right person and might be able to help take that step out of it. And depending on who your member is, we may or may not have we've built relationships in some cases with certain staff, mostly dealing obviously on foreign policy issues. This would probably fall under like tax issues, and so we may not have a direct relationship, but we could try to at least help skip that one interim step. So drop me a note, please.
Thanks very much. I will. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any other needs, questions, updates?
Jonathan, Carolyn had a good, and it's a different part that she had submitted in the chat box. I'm happy to read it for you, or you can read it there. But more about, they rejected her COS exam medical claim from the doctor's office, which is what she followed up with to Peace Corps headquarters, and then they've been late in paying doctor's office bills, and I was contacted by those offices that I could get stuck with the bills if they don't pay timely. And I have heard this from other RPCVs, like on occasion on some of the different Facebook groups and such, where it's an issue. It's a huge issue. So any thoughts you have on that would be great.
Yeah, so that, go ahead,
just
Jen.
reading from the talking points or FAQs from Peace Corps' website, I'm sure you've done all this as far as referring them to, or calling IMG and referring them to the numbers there. Yeah, but, beyond that, I don't know, Jonathan, what we've done in the past, but I can say that when I COS'd in 2003, I had a similar issue with a post-service medical exam not being paid to the provider. So it's been happening for a while.
Let me ask a question too here, and it's not, I don't know if any of you, have you heard of instances of when you first came back home, there were certain individuals, you needed to self-quarantine, and there were some members of your cohorts that needed to, because of COVID situations in their residence, they needed to be elsewhere, and Peace Corps indicated they would cover the cost for lodging and a stipend, like a per diem. I've heard from a few people saying that they've not been fully reimbursed for those costs. If any of you have heard, is that still an issue you're seeing or hearing about? Or please just drop a note in the chat line. I think there's a variety of kind of payment issues. I think even as Dan said, in the most calm times, best of times, with regular kind of flows of COS, there's issues that emerge then, but certainly with the huge influx here, it's probably unfortunate, but probably not surprising that there are ongoing cases. So again, thanks for sharing that information.
And on the reimbursement front too, we had our last month's, we had part of our readjustment allowance deducted based on the last month of our monthly stipend that was deposited into our bank accounts. This happened in Panama, and I'm sure happened in other countries if others want to chime in. But at least in Panama, they were supposed to reimburse us the money in our bank accounts. And this was 6 months ago, and we still don't have that money. And I followed up with, contacts, the highest contacts at Post. I've contacted people in the financial office at headquarters to see if Peace Corps could front the money until the bank accounts, the banks reopen in Panama City for them to take that money out, and they basically just said there's nothing they can do until the banks reopen. So that's another issue on the reimbursement front. I don't know if this is a widespread issue.
That's good to know. In a few dealings that I've had with headquarters around evacuees accessing benefits, it has been suggested to me that RPCV's contact, if you haven't already, your country desk officer. And having been a country desk officer myself, I can say that they're usually recently returned volunteers themselves, and that position is often the one who just kind of goes around the headquarters building and beats the bushes to make sure that things happen. So if I try to buddy up with that person is one suggestion. On the higher end, and Jonathan, you can speak to more about this since I'm relatively new at NPCA, but I know that Glenn, our president, has regular conversations with Jody Olson where we bring issues from our community to her as far as what we're hearing. And if this is something that we're hearing a lot, which I think it is, then it might make it to that agenda and that discussion with Jody. And sometimes things happen when we use our platform and pulpit to that end.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we'll definitely share that with Glenn.
We're kind of getting towards the top of the hour. I just wanted to see if anybody who hasn't shared or provided comment or thoughts that they wanted to, now would be a good time.
A quick question.
Nope.
I'm not sure if NPCA would be able to answer, but have any of you heard at all when returned volunteers might be able to hear about the reinstatement updates? We were told that we would find out in September, but we're 2 weeks into September and haven't heard anything yet.
I don't know what is regularly shared through those emails to the evacuee community, because we're not on those, but what we're hearing, and I think this was Jody Olson herself saying in public address recently, was that January, February would be the first opportunities that their task force is looking at right now for reinstatement. That and even then, it would be looking at countries where the medical situation is able to provide for volunteers. So, and the best case scenario would be a phased re-entry to countries where they're best suited for return. So, yeah, I wouldn't be holding your breath there, Daniel. I know they're everybody at Peace Corps headquarters can't get volunteers back in the field soon enough, because that's their jobs as well. So.
Just to add to that, I think, I mean, I've been hearing the same. Originally, I was hearing October, which I think a lot of people were hearing, but then that's kind of turned into January, which is kind of the, how it goes with this kind of pandemic and such still around and impacting it. But I would recommend, for keeping up to date on it, I would do a couple of things. I think when you open up the Peace Corps website, it still has the COVID-19 update link on the top that you click to, and then that brings to the FAQs. That's clearly going to be, I mean, they should be updating that periodically, right? But also, like Dan said earlier, or Jonathan said, getting in touch with your, country desk officer, just to kind of let them know you remain extremely interested. You're just wondering if they have what's their latest projected timeline for, getting volunteers, beginning to get them out in the field. That's all you can do. But I think that might give you a little more information, especially on your the country, because like Dan said, it's going to be a phased reentry, and, where do they fall in that, in that schedule based on, their health situation and resources and all of that to be able to accommodate the special needs.
As we're getting close to wrapping up, I'd like to just take a little time. We might run a little bit over, if that's okay, because I would like to take a moment just to talk about one of the things that we're working on right now, which is district office virtual meetings with members of Congress or their staff, something we often do during the August, September, even into October period. And Daniel, who just spoke, was among one of the evacuees, and there are probably at least a half dozen evacuees who have led efforts in their particular area, and in his case, North Las Vegas, Nevada, in reaching out and trying to seek meetings with his elected congressional representatives. And I know you've already had one meeting and making progress on a couple of others. Do you want to just take a second to talk about what that's been like, and go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I've really enjoyed the resources that NPCA provides. Certainly for me, I hadn't done something quite like this before, but as you know, I'm trying to get back in the field. Until I can do that, I just want to do what I can to support Peace Corps. So I've gotten in touch with Jonathan, learned about the resources, and he was able to help me figure out where I would find the legislature's websites, kind of what I should write to see if we can get a meeting scheduled. And then Jonathan had helped me connect with other RPCVs, because as a recent evacuee, I certainly have not had as many opportunities to know who all is out there. And so through a series of wonderful email chains, I was able to connect with a lot of really, really wonderful RPCVs in my Southern Nevada community. And we were able to get a first meeting scheduled. We were able to figure out how to discuss the legislation, what legislation we should discuss, and it went very well. I mean, luckily we were contacting an office of a legislator who's at least been pretty supportive so far of Peace Corps. So at least we're preaching to the choir with the importance of Peace Corps. But yeah, currently working on scheduling with our senators' offices and doing some follow-up emails. But at least it's showing me RPCV life, even if I didn't want it to come so soon.
And I recall in your meeting, there were a range of members of the community from different eras, but there was another evacuee, I think, who was part of that meeting. And I'm just curious, what was kind of the reaction from, I think that was a staff level meeting. What was their reaction to having you as an evacuee and the other evacuee hearing from her? How engaged, what was their reaction to all that?
Well, he sounded really appreciative of Peace Corps in general. One of the things he didn't realize, and I'm glad we brought up in our meeting, was just how actively Peace Corps is working to get volunteers back in the field, that certainly nothing has stopped in Peace Corps, even if the volunteers are back home. And so that was something that we really emphasized. And I felt like we had a very diverse amount of opinions in the call we had, where, for example, I'm trying to get back in the field, and my fellow volunteer, she had already served pretty much her 2 years, so she was looking to just find employment, get the health insurance, and just get on with life. And then some of the older RPCVs in our call, who had served in the 70s, were able to provide some strong details about the work that RPCVs do right here at home. So I thought that we had all made very big cases for why Peace Corps is something that is worthy of support, and the office said that they support Peace Corps, so we're very hopeful that with that extra information, they can make sure we get some co-sponsoring on the legislation. That'll really help.
Oh, great, thank you, Daniel. And I'm going to take 2 minutes. I think I can do this in 2-3 minutes, just to do a quick show of some of the resources we have posted for you. And Jody, maybe you can put the link in that is kind of the general link to the pages I'm going to try to show here as I share my screen.
Sure, I can do that.
All right, let's see if I do this right. I'm going to go here and share. Wish me luck. Okay, so the first thing, this is a map we've got that is just showing where meetings are being pursued right now. You can see we've got a big gap in the middle of the country, but a lot of, right now, I think the count is somewhere around close to 60 meetings being sought. The ones in blue are meetings that are being sought. So Kaylee, our intern, who's just joined us from the University of Texas, Dallas, and hopefully is a future Peace Corps volunteer. This is a meeting she's seeking with the office of Senator Ted Cruz. And all of these obviously are virtual meetings. So we just put a little information about these. Here's the meeting that Daniel has had in Las Vegas with Congressman Stephen Horsford with their staff. In a couple of cases with some of the completed meetings. The ones that are in yellow are meetings that are now scheduled but not yet held. So this is the Northern California Peace Corps group has a very important meeting with the office of Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who is very likely going to be the new chair of the appropriations subcommittee that handles Peace Corps funding. So there, she's a big supporter, but making her an even bigger champion will be critical. And then with some of the completed meetings, we often have these shots of people standing outside the office, but here we're getting screenshots showing the meeting. So this is a great Peace Corps supporter, Republican Congressman Garrett Graves, who represents the Baton Rouge, Louisiana area. This here is our advocacy coordinator, Lori Halverson, 2 or 3 RPCVs from different eras who are constituents. And then this was Congressman Graves' Foreign Affairs staffer. So we've had about 10 or 12, I think about, again, 60 meetings, and about 20% of those meetings have either now been held or scheduled. So that's one thing. Then this is kind of our page where we are showing, for those that maybe aren't familiar. So for Daniel and other people, we sent kind of this background document just on how to get a meeting like this started. We had the map here on this page as well. And then further down, we had an issues booklet that kind of talked about some of the talking points and possible issues to bring up in the meetings. So we had a section on Peace Corps funding with background information and talking points. There are some pieces of Peace Corps legislation that are very focused on related to the pandemic. And then back, this is a bill in the Senate that has a lot of bipartisan support to expand, in essence, AmeriCorps and other national service opportunities to address the pandemic, and specifically references as Peace Corps volunteers for priority enrollment, should that program emerge. And then we have some other pieces of legislation that we were working on prior to the pandemic. And I'll just go down to the end where we have an appendix where we have links to PDFs of the various legislation and some other talking points and so on. The last thing I want to show is we have another page of state resources where we try to provide information state by state. So I know, I think it was Dan who was on the call and in the chat noted he's from New York, and his Congresswoman is retiring, and she has been a major leader in Peace Corps. So here's the New York delegation. So for every member of Congress, we try to provide information about those lawmakers as it relates in essence to Peace Corps. So how many current volunteers, we had to adjust that recently to say, well, 0 right now, but pre-evacuation, this many from New York, and then kind of historic numbers. Who are key staff that handle foreign policy issues? What's our meeting history with Senator Schumer in this case? And then what's the history of their supporting different Peace Corps initiatives? So whether it's a congressional letter supporting Peace Corps funding, current legislation, and then legislation that has already been passed or worked on over time. So you can go to that link, and you go to our homepage. If you click on find the advocacy section, there's a link that says state resources, and it'll take you to this page so you can find out more about your work. You know, in closing, I'm saying in this regard, you know, we expect a real long haul here, and our agenda will change as we go along, but we're really in the midst of now an 18 to 36 month period where Peace Corps' future is critical and is something that we've got to raise the bar in terms of our community voice, speaking out, whether it's ways to improve the Peace Corps, which is definitely, if any of you participated in our town hall meetings and our ideas summit, we will be coming out with a report sometime before the end of this calendar year that will have some specific recommendations, and that will help, I think, educate and prepare our advocacy agenda moving forward. But we also, again, for people like Daniel and others that want to get back in and serving, continuing to make the case for support for Peace Corps. So that's the end of just that presentation. With that, I guess I'll turn it back to Dan. I'm happy to, I don't think we've got any other conflicts, and I'm happy to stay on if there's any other things that people want to talk about. But I know we've run overtime here. So thank you all for being part. And Dan, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay.